Chairman and members of the jury, we have a case here with some important aspects to it, which I shall advert to at the apposite time. It is not much, as some of the counsel have pointed out, that the accident in itself, or the way it happened, although, of course, I am going to refer to that because that is the predicate of recovery, if the plaintiff has any recovery, but certain other minutiae as to the extent of the injuries. Do not forget that I am coming to that, and keep your mind focused on that when the time comes. First, as to the way the accident happened, it was due to a collision between a car belonging to and operated by one defendant and a tractor-trailer belonging to and operated by the other defendant. That collision took place, there is no doubt about it. And you have here among the exhibits marked on a map across to show the point in which the collision between the two vehicles is said to have taken place, and check mark to show where the car was at a certain time described by that same witness. I shall not go into a description of the accident itself, except to say that the averment of the defendant railway company is that the tractor-trailer in some way struck against the side of the car. That appears to be the theory. In other words, this defendant contends that it must have been the fault of the trucking company, in that, as testified to by the driver of the truck, the car ran into the truck. I think that is a sufficient statement of the two theories. The defendant railway company's counsel points to the indisputable evidence as to where the glass was broken in the car, as evidence that that must be where they came in contact. And if that is where they came in contact, and for the first time, of course, it means that the car collided with and ran into a truck head-on, as claimed by the other defendant. Now, plaintiff was the passenger in the car. The defendants owe him a duty, but it was not the duty of an insurer, unless you find that the accident was created by the negligence of the railway company. You cannot hold that defendant liable. You cannot hold the other defendant liable unless you find that the negligence of the driver of the tractor-trailer contributed to cause the accident. You may find neither liable, you may find both liable, or you may find one liable. Your verdict, if you find for the plaintiff, must carefully show against which you intend your verdict to be, remembering that the burden is on the plaintiff to show you, by a fairly greater weight of the evidence you believe, every fact upon which he relies, including the cardinal fact of the negligence of either defendant and each of the defendants in this case. He cannot recover against any defendant that he has not shown to be negligent by that burden of proof, by a fairly greater weight of the evidence you believe. Now, assuming, and only assuming, that you have passed by that point of liability, you come to the nature of the injuries. There is no evidence that the plaintiff was negligent and continued to be to the accident so far as the cutting by the glass on his head is concerned. I believe one of the defendants contends that he must have been negligent to have fallen where nobody else fell on the car. Of course, if you find he was negligent in any further action or failure to act which might have been responsible for a more serious injury, why then you must take that into consideration, because he cannot recover if his own negligence contributes to any extent to his damages, or for any damage to which his own negligence contributed in the slightest degree. With that exception, my charge as made sounds on the liability. Now to come to the nature of the injury. Here is the big controversy in the case that has taken so much time and attention by you and by counsel and by myself. The plaintiff contends that he had not merely these superficial bruises and contusions on his hand and, I believe, his face, but also that he had a very serious injury to his head. There is where the fight centers. The plaintiff has some testimony to the effect that he had lumps on his head appearing after the injury, and which the doctors connect with the injury. The defendant offered evidence to the effect that he had no mark on his head after the injury, and moreover, the defendant gives evidence to the effect that anything he had the matter with his head was not due to the accident, but to something else. That is, by expert testimony, a matter of opinion on both sides where offered. The direct medical testimony is to be considered only as to the facts.